welcome to another great episode of My Shot of Life with your co-hosts Steven and
Victor.
Victor, thanks for joining me.
Glad I could be in my own house.
Awesome. So, this week, we're going to be talking about nostalgia, the pros, the cons, and the effects it has on us. We will be sipping on one of the juicy Labatt Blue Lights. This is a nostalgia favorite for you, right?
Absolutely. We decided about 5 minutes before recording that we were going to drink Labatt Blue Light because it invokes in me this feeling of nostalgia, of the good times of college, discovering the greatest light beer in the world.
Well, even the good times of whenever we went to Pennsylvania together. So that reminds me of all the cold pepperoni bread that we had to heat up with our bodies.
Good times, good times.
But yeah, so Labatt Blue Light, that is by Labatt Brewing in Buffalo, New York. One of the greatest light beers of all time, but don't want to let our bias get in the way too early. So you want to go ahead and pop this open. Old school here.
Sounds good.
Not really much of a clink, but
cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, so smooth.
It really is, man. I mean, for a light beer,
Canadian Pilsner, my friend.
I would say it's probably better than Boss Beer, Boss Light, and Sprint Light. Yeah, so this week we're talking on Toilet Talk about bidets, if we've used them, what we think about them, and their potential future use in the United States, maybe?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. When we get done with that, we'll wrap up our discussion and rating on Labatt Blue Light, Canadian Pilsner. So, nostalgia, we've all had it. We all do have it. I would say it's partially why Star Wars came back, right?
Yeah, probably played an influence.
Well, I know whenever I was a kid, and we're already talking into Star Wars, and that's I guess it's not a shock. Grew up watching Star Wars as a kid with my dad, and I think whenever it came back out, when they revitalized it, it was one of those things where it was a bonding thing, and so maybe that's how we connected. You know, that's by having that movie come back out and actually just seeing the lightsabers. That was how great it was as a kid, just seeing people fight with lightsabers. Invokes a little bit of a childhood memory of being outside, playing outdoors.
Yeah, and that definitely makes sense. That feeling of nostalgia, which is a sort of wistful or sentimental yearning, as they say, Merriam-Webster, thank you, for a return to or of some past period or irrevocable condition. Also something that evokes nostalgia. It is nostalgic. It definitely plays a part in today's society, in growing up, in taking us back to the past, those experiences that we've had previously, and makes us feel good first and foremost. That's the big one there.
So do you think it's important for our society to have that the nostalgia moments, or is it that we're relying too much on how we felt in the past?
And that is the question. And in all of the research that we put into this episode, I think a lot of the articles that we read touched on both factors. A lot of them were discussing the fact that individuals in today's society are experiencing nostalgia more and more, and it's addicting. So the positive parts are that it does impact us in a positive way. It influences us to be more social. You know, it takes us back to those times. We bond with people over these nostalgic events. And also, as some of the articles discuss too, they have this impact on individuals where they're willing to do things or spend their money or part with their money for this feeling of nostalgia.
A rekindling of some sort of feeling they've previously had in their life. It's like you know what you're going to feel whenever you see something that, I guess, that brings up those kind of memories. So I'll use the example of whenever I pass the CPA exam. We get a bonus for passing the CPA exam, and then as soon as we passed it, I wasn't even waiting for the check to come in to get my bonus. I saw that there was a new Pokemon game, and this is how lame I was. I mean, I think I was 23 at the time. But as soon as I passed the exam, the very next day I went out and bought a 3DS and then bought Pokemon because it reminded me of being that 12-year-old kid playing his Game Boy at his grandma's house and then just like passing the hours every day, just playing, getting new batteries or freaking out because you're trying to save the game and the battery's dying and then you're in the car on the way to a relative's house whenever you're younger. Just all those feelings of just enjoying that time. Even if it's enjoying time by yourself. I was so fond of playing that game as a kid. And that's not the only game, we have what's a game that comes to your mind whenever you're thinking of nostalgic video games?
It's tough to think of. I think for me, it could start as early as the Super Nintendo, just playing Street Fighter. Anytime I'm playing Street Fighter 2, or Super Street Fighter 2 rather, it takes me back to my brother. He's a little older than me, and he was always way better than I was, but regardless, we would just play for hours, Super Nintendo. I guess N64 is probably the biggest one for me. What
game, like Mario Kart, or?
I think a lot of the games, you've got your classics, like Pokemon Stadium, which brought in, at later points, you could connect your actual Game Boy game.
Oh, yeah, and you could speed it up if
you
got so far in the tournament.
Yeah, so it was kind of cool with that, but specifically Gauntlet Legends was a game.
Man.
Yeah, for N64.
A great multiplayer game.
And it takes me back, and these are some of the memories that invoke nostalgia where, I think back to Christmas mornings, years ago, and we had already had the Gauntlet game, but my brother and I would wake up super early like most kids do, 4 or 5 a.m., go downstairs, check out the hall, and then we would sit patiently, my brother and I, and play Gauntlet for 3 or 4 hours until our parents got up, and then we could actually open presents. So it's just like taking you back to that moment. You have such good memories there.
And I'll even say, I guess it was last year or 2 years ago for Christmas, my grandmother plays video games, so she doesn't shy away from playing games. Yeah, I think so. And so she had a 3DS, and I bought her Legend of Zelda, which they kind of remastered, made for the 3DS. I got her that for Christmas one year because her and I played that same game on the N64 together. And she printed off the walkthrough. We had like a 70-page walkthrough of Oracle of Time. Is it Ocarina of Time?
Yeah.
And just crushed the game over months of playing because it's such a big game. So that meant a lot to me, or I was hoping that it meant a lot to her, and I think it did. And not only that, but this week don't want to talk about gaming too much, but this week Burnout Paradise is making a remastered version. So EA Sports is making a remastered version of that. And that was a game me and one of my little brothers played all the time, and I just remember sitting hours and hours in front of the TV and playing together and laughing and having a great time. So, to me, that sort of those games and having that sort of bonding, it means a lot to me. So whenever thinking about going back and getting those, or like even buying it, it does invoke those memories, and it makes me feel good again.
And there's things too, it's all memory related. You associate these things with positive memories in the past. Most of the time, I would assume you don't want to be nostalgic, remembering times in the past that were negative. I think that's probably something totally different. Depression? I don't know. But, another thing for me, you get, we've covered games. Maybe we're looking at things along the lines that aren't, money related, I guess. One of them kind of is, with food with me specifically, in some traditions. So I'm going to start with the first one was my first kiss. I was almost 5 at the time. So, I count it, put it on the board. But it was the thing of like, as a young kid, you weren't allowed a ton of sugary foods. So Fun Dip for me was like the one. It's a sugar stick that you lick and dip into flavored sugar, and then you eat it, right?
I'm not sure where you're getting at yet.
All right. So just wait for this. So we
The
weren't
fun
allowed
dip
it.
and then kissing.
We were not allowed
sounds
it
like two different
growing
sexual
up.
acts.
Right. We weren't allowed. Gross. We weren't allowed it growing up, and neither was my female neighbor, who was around the same age as I was. So I was able to acquire some fun dip on the black market. Kid on the street corner, I gave him my allowance money, 50 cents, and he just, made sure the cops weren't around, hooked me up with a pack of fun dip, and I split it with this girl, and she was so excited that she gave me a kiss. So that's one. So every time I
you
have
see fun dip?
I see fun dip. I don't have to have it. I don't want it anymore. I don't like sugar in the way that I did when I was younger. But it just makes me think of that. It takes me back to my first kiss. I don't even care about the first kiss at this point. I care about the fact that fun dip brings me back to that moment. So that's pretty cool. And then on the traditional side, making Christmas cookies with the fam. They weren't that great. They were homemade, standard cookie dough. We would color them different colors and had our cookie cutters and whatnot. But it's just getting the whole crew in the kitchen, making those Christmas cookies. And we went a few years while my brother and I were in school, in college, where we didn't make them. And then one year we decided, let's do it again. And it was just like old times, just taking us back to elementary school and middle school when we didn't have a care in the world and we were just making cookies around Christmas. You got any good ones like that, Steve? Traditions?
I don't know if I have any
food-related nostalgia?
off the top of my head. Food-related. My mom will make the same dish for me I ask her to make it every birthday, so that kind of invokes a little bit of childhood memories of living back with the family and being able to spend more time with them, so that puts me in a pretty safe and comfortable space. But it's not the same thing as what you're getting at. I guess like watching baseball sometimes makes me remember, and maybe that's why I feel so connected to watching the Red Sox play baseball, is that I used to watch it with both sides of my family. I've said this before on the podcast, where my mom married two different guys who both like the Red Sox. Fortunately,
not at the same time.
Not this. No, she was this. But it worked out, and we got to enjoy the sport together. So I guess it does make me remember some of the good times that I spent with both of my fathers, as well as some of my brothers, watching some games. And even whenever we go out to a game, I get to remember some of those times that we had going to the different stadiums whenever I was younger. So that's something that's non. I mean, I guess you could say it's financially related when you're paying for the ticket, but it's more of an event or a situation or an experience, I guess, rather than like a video game.
And that's something you continue to do today, right? You go to sporting events all the time with your brothers and your dads, and
definitely not as much as I used to, because they would pay for it, and then I would definitely go with them.
It's a little different.
But now I have to pay for it. It doesn't happen as frequently.
But it's still nice. I know your dad comes to visit Raleigh, goes to state games all the time with you.
Yeah,
so it's good.
Yeah, that's it. So that's something. Movies were something that was always big in our household, and so watching certain movies, and the first one that comes off the top of my head is Anchorman, for sure. We could quote Anchorman by line in that movie, and again, I've seen this movie with both sides of my family, and we all love it. And it's one of the movies that we can just say a line from the movie in random conversation, and the other person definitely knows what's going on. That and Wedding Crashers probably ranks up there. Highest nostalgic movies,
so
at least for me.
Yeah, and we've been playing off of this idea of like the interconnectedness of the events, like certain movies or foods or events occur that take you back to those moments of that bonding experience that you're sharing with other people. And so we're going to touch on some other senses, I think, maybe it'll just be me with this one, but the sense of smell, I think, is a big one for me. And this is going to sound really weird.
Is it like an old grandma smell? Because I can picture that.
No, I did have an ex-girlfriend who wore a really strong perfume that was like super grandma-like.
Ooh.
And so...
Did she also wear granny panties?
No, she did not. But
Did they make granny thongs?
That's not what we're here to talk about.
That's not okay.
So the sense of smell, if you went to high school with me, you'll know that I was a little weird. I mean, I still am, but this was probably one of the stranger things that I did.
Stranger Things. Oh, that was a callback, right, to the show?
Sure
That's
was.
also nostalgic.
Nostalgic, throwback to the 80s, which I did not live through, but love very much. As we've
Hashtag on
discussed.
purpose.
Yes. Cultural appropriation.
Go ahead. What you were saying.
So this whole smell thing, right? I would smell people, and eventually I was able to associate certain people's fabric softeners with certain people.
By brand?
Not necessarily. I don't think I'd identify them by brand, but like I would catch a whiff of something in the air and I would know who was near me. I don't know if this is just like me having a ridiculous sense of smell or like having these this strange ability or desire. Like I enjoy things that smell good just like every other person. But now I'll catch a whiff of different fabric softeners and I will think back to those specific people from high school that used to use those fabric softeners. And so I'm not necessarily nostalgic about it, but it's just something that has the power to pull me back to those moments of knowing other people's scents, I guess. Kind of a weird thing, but...
a little bit. I thought you were just going to say you walked around sniffing girls' hair or something.
No.
And then you could just identify which girl it was without looking at them.
That's a little too far.
If they lined up, you could just pick them out. It's Sarah. She has the best hair.
I know that's Garnier Fructis, man.
That stuff. High dollar. She spends money on it. So if we got away from the actual, our own personal experiences of nostalgia, how long do you think one would have to live before they start recalling nostalgic experiences or nostalgic
that's a great question.
triggering
So in some of the studies that we read for this, a lot of folks who experience nostalgia are looking back a minimum of a decade.
I was actually going to say that. That's how I feel.
Yeah, there were some studies that actually showed that 8-year-olds were able to comprehend and feel nostalgic about like
diapers.
But the thing is, like, you don't have memories at that point. Like I at least me, I don't have memories of like my first 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
So they're being nostalgic about less than 5 years ago. And it's like, man, that's great. Maybe it's because they're starting school. And
it used to be so much easier to just crawl around.
They were kindergarten and they were coloring, and now they're in like third grade and they're like doing math.
I just feel like, well, I think now kids are more self-aware than they were in the past. At least whenever we were younger. I don't want to speak for you, but for me, I don't recall really know what was going on. I think everyone thinks adults know everything, especially whenever you're not an adult, and then you soon realize that
now kids at a younger age are being exposed to more these days.
Yeah, maybe they're being exposed more to the realism of the our environment, and so kids aren't sugarcoating adulthood, or they're not glorifying what it would be to become an adult, and so they're kind of finding their place in the world, and they're realizing that they're just a regular person, just like everyone else.
They are special snowflakes, Stephen, and don't you forget that.
That's what the parents are trying to tell them these days. Oh, I heard that was why Norway was doing so well in the Olympics.
Why?
Because they're all the way up to age 13, they would tell their kids that winning didn't matter, but then at the age of 13, or I guess around that age,
that's all that mattered.
Well, I don't think it was that, but I think the kids were... I guess the idea was that, no, now winning does matter, but then for the kids it was always like, no, winning's always mattered. This is ridiculous.
They figured it out for themselves.
Yeah.
It's also that Norway is Norway, and this is the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, so it's really cold.
We'll challenge them at the Summer Games and see what happens.
Yeah.
But, so back to the point you were trying to make, I guess, was, how far back do these things go? And so something that companies take advantage of is that idea that people are nostalgic for things about a decade back. And so we grew up, and I'm sure you've had it, and you were just pulling up pictures here recently of Surge.
Surge soda, man.
Surge soda, kind of a high energy drink.
It was almost.
Was it the late 90s, mid to late 90s?
I think it was late 90s. It had to have been early 2000s too.
And so they eventually brought it back because there was so much nostalgia for it. And I mean, I will be the first to admit that, you know, I followed along when they brought it back, and I was like the first person to go get it when they.
Was it as good as you remember it being?
No.
I honestly thought it was a glorified mellow yellow, but
A little more caffeine.
I would say more caffeine, more kind of leaning more towards the Mountain Dew type flavor. But what about Vault? Dude, I don't even remember this drink. I mean, I remember it now.
Introduced in 2005.
Wow,
marketed
guys.
until 2011.
And then there was a Urge.
Never heard of that.
Holy cow. So there was a Surge, and then there was a Urge. That's not the same company, is it?
That looks like very European. I don't know. But
If you guys want to buy...
country of
there you
origin,
go,
Norway.
From Norway.
They're winning
That's
the
the
Olympics
Urge.
because of Urge.
If you guys want to order us a case of Urge, we'll try it out and review it on the show. That'll be our next drink.
Yeah, feel free to send it to us at our not my house address. Maybe
.com.
we'll get a PO box or something.
Yeah. No
man.
Unabomber stuff here.
No thanks. But yeah, so I mean, companies out there are using these nostalgia effects that things from the past.
Because they know that people remember the branding, and they're like, oh well, I'm familiar with this already. You don't have to. For them, I think they don't have to press something new, get you to get comfortable with a new product. There was already an existing product that just for whatever reason ceased to exist. With Surge, I honestly couldn't tell you why it canceled, because I thought the demand was pretty good. Maybe when they started cutting down some of the sugar in some of the drinks,
Yeah.
maybe that they took one of the hits there.
But I guess another big one is even current products. A couple years ago, there was, I guess was it Alexa or Google or an iPhone? I don't remember what specifically it was for, but it was for some sort of technology. And I realized that Sesame Street is still on today, but they used the Cookie Monster as the Cookie. They used the Cookie Monster as the person or thing, the Muppet. Not a Muppet.
That does the
but-
voice.
No, they used the actual puppet of the Cookie Monster
yeah.
in the commercial.
Mhm.
He was like baking cookies, and he told his iPhone or
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
to set a timer
Mhm.
for whatever. And so, you know, they're still using that today. They know the people who are purchasing this technology today are the people who grew up watching Sesame Street, which is still happening. I understand that. But the kids are going to see it. They're going to be like, oh, man, Sesame Street, I need whatever that product is, even though I probably can't use it. And then adults are going to see it and be like, man, Sesame Street, you know, the company who's advertising for this must like Sesame Street. I don't know, but it has that nostalgic effect to pull you back and maybe make you think about getting the product.
Do you think it's just a cop-out if you can't think of a good way to market a product?
The two biggest cop-outs, a friend of mine went to school for marketing, and she said in all of their projects in marketing and advertising, they were not allowed to use sex or babies. So nostalgia was allowed, but sex and babies,
But what about rock and roll or drugs?
no. Drugs sell themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think drugs use the sex route,
Yeah.
the sex appeal and stuff. I guess that is a pretty easy way to sell stuff. I guess with babies, you just, oh my god, it's so cute, look at it, and I want that for my baby. Or
So what about, I guess things stemming off of that, you know, maybe vintage items. You know, a lot of people go through these phases.
pinball machines.
Pinball machines, people buying video game machines for their house.
I was thinking record players.
That's been a big
I mean,
uptick.
and I don't know
mean,
if
you
that's
look at some
because
records and how much they cost. It's crazy.
yeah, I don't know if that's because it's a nostalgia thing or if it's actually the sound quality. People say it's warmer sounding.
Warmer.
But I don't know if that has something to do with it. Maybe.
Definitely possible. I mean, everything's going to play in there. Sound quality, vintage. Some people just want to show off that they have this cool old
Yeah.
stuff.
What else? What else comes off the top of your head? Old cars.
Classic cars. That's a big one. I think it's
Quaaludes.
Gosh, I wish those were. No, I don't. I do not wish those were still around. But I think it would be kind of fun.
To go to sleep.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about the impact on the market today for those items. You know, you find these old things that typically will not work as good as well as a current day product or current technology, or in the case of cars specifically, you know, these things are running on fuel and just the exhaust systems.
Diesel.
Yeah, they're terrible for the environment and everything that they're releasing into the atmosphere. It just was not on par with the requirements that we have out there today. So just why? Like, why are people willing to spend the money? I understand sometimes it's a rarity thing. These items are few and far between. There's only a few left. People are willing to spend the money for those items. But it just, from a practicality standpoint, it doesn't make sense.
I've seen collectibles. People collect toys, cars, stamps,
Video games,
anything really.
chairs.
They're toenail clippings.
Gross.
I don't know if that brings nostalgia or not. I hope not. Maybe that. So the question that you're asking, why are people doing it? If that brings nostalgia, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I guess I don't know what other solution there is, unless they just want to show it off. Some people are impressed by those sort of things, and so by having, and I like using the car example for that purpose. You can't really show off with having 30-year-old video games or Star Wars dolls from the 1970s.
You can to the right people.
I guess so. I guess you're right. So it might be a status thing for depending on what your collectible.
That's a great point. So it's not even, at some points, it's not even for that feeling of nostalgia. It's just so that they can brag or show off to other people, hey, I have this, which is disgusting. But, you know, it happens. So there's that. I think I want to hit on real quick the actual physiological impact that nostalgia has, if you don't mind, and then we can maybe see a couple further examples of nostalgia. But so nostalgic experiences stimulate certain metabolic activity within the brain, and I believe dopamine is going to be released in that as well.
I could totally understand why.
They hit those
a sense of comfort.
Pleasure centers pretty well. Hippocampus specifically has a lot of blood flow in that region, according to studies and science. But that's pretty much what happens. It's the same thing as doing drugs, I guess. And that was the one negative that there weren't a ton of negatives that I noticed from all of our research, but the one negative was that nostalgia can be addictive and in some ways detract from, as all the hippie people say, living in the moment, or like, you know, living in the present, being present for things, and it can detract from that.
Well, I already think that we're in a stage right now where there's an overabundance of marketing techniques to show us the nostalgia ways of the 90s. It's getting to the 90s now, right? So it wasn't the 80s for a good 3 or 4 years, maybe even longer than that. Stranger Things came out. They just remade it. They have a bunch of other remade movies from the 80s, I believe. Karate Kid came out in the 2010s or whatever. And now it's getting to the point where, I guess it's so glaringly obvious from a consumer standpoint. For me, whenever I go to the grocery store and then I see Star Wars tissue boxes, I think that's a little bit too much, and then you're kind of killing a brand. So then it's, even if I'm like, oh, Star Wars, yeah, like, you know, there's a amount of nostalgia that you can hit and then max out, and then whenever you have more than that, it's a the more you see it after this max, after you hit the peak, it starts declining.
Yeah.
The impact on you,
there's
right?
an
And
economic term for that. I can't remember.
diminishing returns.
That's the one.
And so what you're saying is, per the psychological article that you read, the dopamine is being triggered by seeing or feeling or remembering some of the nostalgic, or whatever it is that's triggering the nostalgia in your life or in your memory. And I think that is 100% accurate up to a point. And then at that point, it diminishes because there's an overabundance or you're subjecting yourself to too much of it.
Yeah.
It now no longer holds the
its
same.
effect.
Yes, it loses its effect. It's too much on you.
Definitely. So I think another thing that we looked at that's kind of about this living in the present is that there are more and more opportunities to not do so. And these companies like your Twitters and your Instagrams and your Snapchats, when you're taking these pictures, right? The digital camera gave us the opportunity to relive moments only moments after they actually occurred, right? So you pull up, you take pictures on your digital camera. This is years ago. Now your cell phone, because that's the day and age we live in, and you can immediately go back and look at them, or in a couple days go back and look at them. And so we've lost this ability to really live in the moment and absorb what's going on around us. We're too busy with this. Part of it's social status, and part of it is, wanting that ability. You're bookmarking nostalgic moments. You're saying, oh my gosh, I want to take a picture of this. And then because that 10 years down the road, you're going to be able to look at that picture and it'll take you back to that moment. So I understand the point of the pictures and all the apps that are out there right now, but at the same time, we're losing the ability to really, it wasn't something that people thought about. Back in the day, they didn't want to show off to people what they're doing just to do so. So I think that's kind of a problem that we're running into today with nostalgia, is that everybody's so quick to jump on it and be like, I know I want to remember this moment forever. And I get it, but
for me, when we talk about this, I always wonder if thinking about nostalgia, because we've talked about the benefits of it. We've talked about how it kind of is pushed down on us a lot because of marketing. How much do you think that nostalgia is bad in the sense that you're living in the past, as opposed to what you're saying is living in the now? So you're thinking the way you're thinking right now is, I want to do this now so I can take pictures and I can preserve the memory and then kind of relive it in the future. But when we're looking at nostalgia in the present day, we're looking back at it in the past. How much is it now that we are living in the past from reliving these moments and then having that feeling, the rushes of dopamine, and then going back for more and more because we want to feel good instead of developing ourselves as a person and getting different experiences in the present day?
I think it would be interesting to see if there were any studies out there on that. You have to imagine that at some point there's just too much nostalgia. The benefits are out there and they are researched. You're looking back on these events, you have this feeling of optimism afterward. They had one of the studies, they had people write about events that they experienced in a positive light in the past, and then they had people just write about, something that was going on currently, whatever. And the articles or the paragraphs that these people wrote about the nostalgic events, they ran it through a word processor, and it picked out all of the words that had to do with optimism and positive thoughts, and it significantly outweighed in those nostalgic paragraphs the paragraphs that the people wrote about just regular everyday things. It's proven that it is beneficial to you. You will feel better. But like you said, at what point is it just you're doing yourself a disservice by living so heavily in the past? And I think that is something that could be researched a little better.
So, as we said, it's both beneficial and it also has its consequences.
Sure does. I guess one last thing there, one of the more nostalgic things for me was looking back to when I studied abroad in Italy in college, and we get into the dorms there and walk into the bathroom, and there's this weird foreign object in the toilet, and I was like, what is this hole in the toilet? And it was a bidet. So I have a certain nostalgia for bidets. My first experience was while I was over in Europe.
And do they have segways in Europe?
They might be called segways there. I don't know.
We are going to segue our way into toilet talk.
Oh, brought to you by
Segways.
Where you can easily move about,
and
now with a toilet attachment.
Yeah. Bidets. I've never used one.
You're missing out.
Where do you even go to get one in the United States? So I've been different countries via a cruise line. Jamaica. I've been to the Bahamas. Maybe I've been to Jamaica. Okay,
places
I'm pretty sure I've been to Jamaica.
Yeah,
in the Caribbean. Yeah, but
nice.
Those places, as you may know, and those listeners that are listening now, I don't think they have bidets out there.
It's certainly...
But we don't have bidets here either, though, so I'm not speaking ill of them.
Yeah. As far as I know... Okay, let's get this out of the way first. A bidet, for those of you who are not familiar, is a low oval basin used for washing one's genital and anal area. So
they could have been more pleasant in the description.
Could have been more pleasant, but it's
the perineum, inner buttocks, and anus.
Yes.
I like that.
It's I don't know how to explain it. It's definitely more common in Europe and Asia for sure. They have some crazy stuff over in Asia. The toilets there are ridiculous. That's for another day. But we can talk about bidets, and a lot of times it's just for general cleanliness. I feel like they value that over there. Not that we don't in the United States, but it's just an easier way to...
As someone who's never used
the grundle
one
area
and doesn't really understand the process of how they work, I will be asking you a series of questions about how this works, and then and what stage. When you get done using the bathroom, do you use toilet?
Just out of habit, yes.
So they do whenever you're in Europe and they have bidets next to the toilet. They have toilet paper next to the toilet as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
it's
so
not they're not mutually exclusive.
Oh, okay. See, I thought it was you finish and then you spray it like a fire hose.
Yeah.
Just soak it down.
Yeah, some of them are pretty crazy and have hoses and stuff. Others are just literally a basin with a nozzle that you kind of turn on and off and adjust the pressure.
Yeah, I want that. It looks like a water hose inside your bathroom. But that looks like the pressure might be a little bit too hard. Does it just like kind of shoot up like a water fountain? Like is that soft? You can
adjust the nozzle. Yeah, and it's not going to like give you an enema. It's not that kind of pressure. You see this one here?
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at one right now that looks like it's some sort of attachment.
Whoa, look at that, dude. It's like a little water gun.
Yeah, so it's kind of an angled attachment
But do you line that up with your anus?
Yeah. You ideally you get the
spray on the back.
You get the whole area.
Now, this is where being naked on the toilet comes in handy.
Certainly does.
Because
Steve's most comfortable position, even to this day.
I'm just saying, like, you don't want to get water all over your clothes.
True.
And you don't want to spray like poo juice or particles on your clothing. So
yeah, dirty water.
I'm just advocating for.
They have the ones we had were actually built into the toilets over in Italy. They also have ones here specifically in the U.S. or anywhere. I guess you can get an attachment for your toilet. You hook it up yourself, and it's kind of a series of hoses and attachments that turn your toilet into a bidet attachment. And then they also have separate bidets that are actual basins. It's basically a separate toilet minus the whole flushing thing. It's more of a sink at that point, but it's designed for the cleanliness of the undercarriage.
Now, you sent me a picture not too long ago of, I guess, the toilet or the bidets in Korea.
That is correct. There's a
And-
lot of talk with the Olympics going on right now of the sophistication of the bidet options in Korea.
And it looks like they have some some very interesting pictures of, I guess, well, for people who are coming in from the United States to Korea, more than likely don't know Korean. So having picture buttons with illustrations, rather, on their bidets, and I guess like there was 3 different pictures, and one had like a butt spread open, and then I can't remember the other 2, but I thought it was really funny.
One
and
was just a stream of water, and the other was specifically a woman.
cleaning her gooch.
So
I don't know if it was her gooch. Sorry.
it was something.
But I will post that on the My Shot of Life website for you guys to check out. Tell us what you think about it.
Yeah, learn about bidets. They're pretty great. I definitely recommend.
And you can buy one.
Trying
You
them.
can buy an attachment for your normal toilet seat. Or
Sure
your
can.
toilet, just toilet itself.
Yeah. It's not a difficult process to install, from what I understand.
Well, how much would you spend on one? Because you currently do not have one, so there's
Don't.
a clear understanding that you haven't, you either
think
haven't
at
done the
this
research
point-
or you don't want it bad enough.
At this point, that is exactly it's a want versus a need situation for me. If I ever remodel my master bath, I will be getting a bidet toilet combo going on. I just think it's a good benefit to have.
I
in a
suggest
toilet.
getting one with a command center and a remote control.
Bunch of knobs on it
Mhm.
to control the stream.
So you are in favor 100% of
100%.
the United States adopting the code of the
Universal
bidet.
Yeah,
Universal bidet.
absolutely. I think it's clean. It's a cleanly way to.
I really wish I could even touch on the subject, but I've never even used one, and I don't know if I've ever been in a position where I could have used one.
I mean, we've recently. You use butt wipes, right?
Yeah.
And so do I on occasion, and it gives you a very similar feeling of freshness. You don't have those where
Well, all right. I have another question. Another great question, I think, actually. When you get done using the bidet, do you wipe again?
you gotta dry off.
Right?
I'm sure some of them have like some sort of air blowing option on them.
That's what we're missing, because if you're not drying off, then you're just as bad as it spraying up into your clothes. It
Yeah.
could just soak through your clothes.
Yeah, that's a valid argument.
So I don't know if people are thinking about this stuff. Hopefully, if you're timing your poops perfectly where you're, pooping and then going in the shower and taking a shower after that, then you don't need a bidet.
Sure don't. But
Right?
how many of
You
us
just go
do
down,
that?
touch your ankles, and let that water spray you in the butt, right?
Yeah,
I don't do that.
sure.
I'm kidding. But if you're not doing that, if you're not pooping and then taking a shower, then you're just going about your day. Or if you're taking a shower then pooping, which, you might as well go back to bed at this point. Start your whole day over. But, yeah, so
That's
advocating for bidets.
Solid
Victor,
point.
2020.
Definitely, that's my campaign slogan. Bidet or I don't know.
Bidet. Good day to bidet.
That's right. Every day is a good day to bidet.
All right.
All right. So let's do our weekly plug here of the Raleigh Rambler real quick. Anyone out there finds themselves in the Raleigh area?
Looking for love, looking for beer, looking to run?
Yeah,
We got you covered with the Raleigh Rambler.
definitely. If you're just here traveling for some time, or if you live here, check out the Raleigh Rambler podcast, available on our website and on SoundCloud every Sunday afternoon. It'll give you a listing of events that are occurring in the upcoming week, starting on the Monday after the episode airs. So you can listen on Sunday, plan out your whole week as far as what events you're going to go ahead and take on that week, and then enjoy them. get out, get involved, have some fun.
And remember, guys, we're doing this free of charge. So if you have any recommendations for what you would like to see in the future with the Raleigh Rambler, feel free to shout us out at myshylife.com, our email address, or any of our social media accounts.
Definitely. So,
wrapping up the episode with
Labatt Blue Light
Labatt
review.
Blue Light.
It's a big one. The greatest beer of all time.
All right, so are we rating this on a light beer rating, or are we rating this on just a regular beer?
I think that we should maybe have a separate light beer list eventually. No.
Well, I want the
No.
people to
Let's
understand that just because it is a great light beer doesn't make it a great beer.
True.
You know, we're gonna go heavy for IPAs all day. I know, and then Vic even loves sours, which
Love
I
sour
think
beers.
tastes like sweaty. That's not sweaty.
Sweaty socks. No, that's about
Anything
right.
that makes you pucker up, like your mama.
Whoa, gross.
Uh,
Like Sour Patch Kids. Whatever happened to the Cabbage Patch Kids? You got the Cabbage
they were
Patch.
eating.
Do you think Cabbage Patch Kids would eat Sour Patch Kids?
What about the Garbage Pail Kids?
Do you remember those
Did they eat
Cabbage Patch Kids that like they had to recall because they were the ones that ate stuff?
No.
Like
Did they eat-
plastic food, and like kids would stick their finger in there and the motor would just crush their fingers.
Seriously?
Yeah, they had
That's
to recall
amazing.
them.
And Furbies? We didn't talk about Furbies either.
Nostalgia.
Well,
There you go.
that's a good wind-up of the episode.
How about that?
But to the rating, because we got detracted slightly. Labatt Blue Light, I'm going to give it a 2.75 as a regular beer.
Regular beer,
Out of 5.
I'm giving it a 3.0 out of 5.
Okay.
It is close to my heart. Nostalgia has no impact on the rating, but you will never, I promise you, never hear me rate another light beer greater than a 3.0. Unless any like local brewers are out there that have a light beer, which is rare and weird. But if you do, send it over. We'll give it a taste test, and we'll see how it compares to the best light beer on the market, Labatt Blue Light. Not a sponsor.
In a separate list, what do you rate Labatt Blue Light with all the light beers out there? With the Sprints and the Bud Lights and the Miller Lights?
Labatt for me is a 4.8 on the light beer scale.
That's a good rating, guys. It's a high recommendation for anyone who wants to get.
I mean, it is just, it's crisp, refreshing, just the right amount of carbonation. The flavor is there. As far as Canadian Pilsners go, they are superior in every way to whatever Coors do. Coors is water. So, I mean, there's no flavor there at all. But it's a perfect combination of flavor, but not too much, not that it's overwhelming, to take away the refreshing, just ice cold. You heard that pop at the top of the show of the can cracking. Ugh, just takes me back, man. Nostalgia out the waz, taking me to Beer Olympics years ago, slugging them down like they're water.
Coming in second?
Hey, I came in, I don't even
Second?
remember.
You coming first?
Iceland won.
Yeah,
My
so-
team was Iceland 2 years ago. We dominated.
Oh, yeah.
And Labatt Blue Light, we have to thank for that.
Thanks to Labatt Blue.
Not a sponsor.
I'd rate it a 4.4 because I reserve the right to say that there might be a better beer out there. I don't know that, so we might max out at 4.4 if we ever try any other light beers. But there's a great big world out there, and hope to try something different in the future. Maybe you can sway my opinion. But
I
right now,
appreciate your open-mindedness.
Labatt Blue Light is the king of the castle when it comes to light beers that I've had, though. Right out the gate, you throw it down. It's not too watered down. I know it's a light beer, but you still got that flavor at the end, just like a Pilsner does, but not like dirty water. Bud Light.
I'm talking to you, Bud Light.
You hear me. So, yeah, recommendations all around. I think we'd highly suggest if you have a tailgate, if you live in Canada, if you
Or
live
anywhere
near the north.
Yeah,
that
they
actually
don't
has
sell it a ton down here, so
It's only in
tough.
bottles here.
Tough to come by. I have my parents, when they come to visit, they normally bring me a 30 rack from up north.
Those racks on racks.
30 rack. So it's delicious. Go out and try some. find it on tap somewhere. If you do in the Raleigh area, please reach out to me because, or Molson. If that's on draft somewhere, call me.
Molson?
Molson.
Is that Canadian?
Also Canadian. Fantastic. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate it. Thanks for the support of the podcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes so you can stay up to date on all of our content, including the Raleigh Rambler. If you feel so inclined, please rate and leave us a review. It really helps to drive our exposure on a national scale. Don't forget to check out our website, myshotoflife.com, and give us a follow on social media. That's at myshotoflife on Twitter and Instagram. In addition to iTunes, please check out our SoundCloud and our Stitcher, where we will be posting our episodes each week. Feel free to reach out to us through our various outlets with comments and suggestions on future episode topics, as well as different drinks to try and to rate.
Well, guys, we're signing off here, wrapping up nostalgia, and per usual, let's tap the glass one more time.
Feeling nostalgic about it.
I'm gonna hit the tip with you. I can't really make any noise with this can.
Ding.
But guys, always remember, when you're out there drinking, drink with your friends.
Cheers.